Hey friend, tonight we'll take a quiet walk through forgotten memories, starting with a strange moment etched in history. In 587 BCE, Jerusalem's temple fell to Babylonian forces, and amid the smoldering ruins, priests whispered of a bronze serpent, Nehushtan, crafted by Moses to heal the afflicted. Yet, King Hezekiah shattered it, branding it an idol. Why destroy a sacred relic tied to divine salvation? The question curls like smoke, drifting through time, hinting this might change how you see everything. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if this story soothes you and you enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The serpent slithers through humanity's oldest tales, its scales glinting like embers in the firelight of memory. In Eden, where the world was still soft as a newborn's breath, a serpent spoke, not with malice, but with a question that cracked the foundation of paradise. The book of Genesis paints it as a creature of cunning, coiled around the tree of knowledge, its voice a low hum blending with the rustle of leaves. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree? It asked Eve, its eyes like polished amber, holding her gaze. The question wasn't just a challenge, it was a spark, igniting the human hunger to know, to reach beyond the familiar. This serpent wasn't merely a snake. Ancient Hebrew texts call it nashash, a word that slinks between serpent, deceiver, and shining one. Was it a fallen angel, a divine messenger, or something stranger still? Scholars pore over faded scrolls, debating its form. But its role is undeniable. It was the first to whisper of choice, of stepping beyond the garden's emerald walls. The fruit Eve took wasn't just forbidden. It was a key to a world where knowledge came at a cost: exile, labor, mortality. Yet, that same serpent, cursed to crawl on its belly, became a symbol of something far greater, its story weaving through time like a river carving stone. Picture Eden at twilight, the air thick with the scent of overripe figs and jasmine. The serpent's coils gleam like a river under moonlight, each scale a tiny mirror reflecting the stars. It doesn't force Eve's hand, it simply waits, its presence a quiet challenge. What does it mean to choose? The question hangs in the air, heavy as the fruit on the tree. Eve's fingers brush the apple's smooth skin, its weight unfamiliar yet alive with promise. The bite is sharp, the juice bitter, but in that moment, her world expands. The garden, once a cradle, becomes a threshold. The serpent watches, silent now, its amber eyes unblinking, its work complete. There's a gentle truth here sometimes. The things that unsettle us most are the ones that wake us up. The serpent didn't destroy Eden. It revealed what was already possible within its borders, like a seed breaking open in dark soil. Its whisper cracked the shell of certainty, letting something new grow. Eden wasn't lost. It was transformed. Its boundaries stretched to hold the weight of human consciousness. The serpent, vilified as a tempter, was also a guide, leading humanity to the edge of innocence and inviting it to step forward. Consider the desert, centuries later, where the Israelites wandered, bitten by fiery serpents sent as divine judgment. Numbers 21 tells of Moses crafting Nehushtan, a bronze snake lifted high on a pole. Those who looked upon it lived, a serpent, once the bringer of death, now a conduit for healing. The paradox deepens when you realize this wasn't unique to Israel. Across ancient cultures, the serpent's form wove through sacred stories, always carrying a dual-edge creation and destruction, wisdom and danger. In Eden, it was no different. Its whisper wasn't just temptation, it was an invitation to see the world through new eyes, to trade the safety of ignorance for the vastness of understanding. Imagine Eve standing at the garden's edge, the fruit's aftertaste lingering on her tongue. The world beyond is wild, untamed, its horizons sharp with possibility. Did she regret the bite, or did she sense the expanse of what lay ahead? The serpent's question echoes still, not just in her heart, but in ours. What does it mean to choose? Knowing the cost, the story doesn't answer. It simply holds the question like a flame, letting it flicker in the quiet. The serpent's coils, like a ribbon of starlight, wind through Eden's story, but they don't end there. Its shape, its questions, reappear in temples, myths, and dreams across the ages. In Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and beyond, the serpent takes new forms, each culture seeing something different in its gaze, a guardian, a trickster, a god. Yet, in Eden, it was simply a voice, asking humanity to step into the unknown. Its scales catch the light of a fading sun, and the garden grows still, as if holding its breath. There's a poetic image in this moment, the serpent as a bridge, its body stretching between the divine and the human, between the known and the unseen. Its coils are a spiral, endless and turning, like the cycles of growth and loss that define us. And there's grace here, too, in the way it offered Eve not just a fruit, but a chance to become more than she was. The serpent's gift was heavy, but it was also luminous, like a pearl born from grit and time. The serpent's story is humanity's story, a tale of falling and rising, of losing paradise to find something else. As the stars wheel over Eden, the serpent's amber eyes seem to watch still, waiting for the next choice. What would you have done, standing in Eve's place, the fruit in your hand? The question isn't meant to trouble you. It's an invitation to reflect, to feel the weight of your own choices in the quiet of this night. This tale of the serpent is just beginning. From Eden's soft earth, its path winds forward, threading through ancient cities and sacred rites. Each culture it touches sees it anew, but its essence remains a symbol of the moment we choose to know, to grow, to step beyond. As you settle deeper into the night, let the serpent's whisper linger, not as a warning, but as a call to wonder. The serpent's whisper fades from Eden's twilight, but its shadow stretches far, curling into the cradle of civilization. In ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers braid the earth like veins, the serpent emerges anew, its scales etched in clay tablets older than memory. Around 3000 BCE, in the bustling city of Uruk, priests carved stories of serpents guarding sacred knowledge, their coils entwined with the divine. The air there was thick with dust and incense, the streets alive with the clatter of carts and the murmur of scribes. Temples rose like mountains, and within their shadowed halls, the serpent was no tempter, but a keeper of secrets, a bridge to the gods. Picture a Sumerian priestess, her linen robes brushing the cool stone floor of a ziggurat's inner sanctum. Her fingers trace a tablet, its cuneiform wedges telling of Ningish Zida, a serpent god whose form winds through the underworld and the heavens. Ningish Zida, whose name means Lord of the Good Tree, was no mere snake, but a deity of vegetation, healing, and hidden wisdom. His serpent form, often depicted with horns or twined around a staff, symbolized life's renewal, like barley sprouting from parched soil. The priestess lights a lamp, its flame dancing on the walls, and whispers a hymn to this god, her voice soft as the rivers flow. The serpent, she believes, holds the key to the cosmos, its coils a map of creation's pulse. In Mesopotamian myth, serpents were not cast as villains. They were guardians, often linked to the goddess Inanna, who descended to the underworld past gates watched by serpent-eyed spirits. One tale, etched in the Epic of Gilgamesh, speaks of a serpent stealing the plant of immortality from the hero's grasp. Gilgamesh, weary from his quest, bathes in a pool when the snake, silent as moonlight, slips away with the herb. The hero weeps, not for the plant alone, but for the truth it reveals. Immortality belongs to the divine, not to man. Yet, the serpent doesn't hoard this gift. It sheds its skin, reborn, offering a quieter wisdom. Life is a cycle, not a line. There's a gentle truth in this. What we lose often teaches us more than what we keep. The serpent, by taking the plant, gave Gilgamesh a gift heavier than eternal youth, the understanding that endings are beginnings in disguise. Like a river carving new paths through stone, loss reshapes us, revealing strength we didn't know we had. The Mesopotamians saw this in the serpent's endless renewal, its skin sloughed off like a memory released to the wind. Imagine the city at dusk, the sky bruised purple over the ziggurat's stepped silhouette. A merchant pauses by a shrine, offering a clay serpent figurine, its eyes two pressed beads of lapis. He prays for safe travels, believing the serpent's gaze will ward off misfortune. In the marketplace, a healer mixes herbs, muttering of serpent venom that both harms and heals, a paradox as old as the rivers. The serpent's image is everywhere on seals, amulets. Temple freezes its form, a reminder that knowledge is both a burden and a light. To know the god's secrets, the Mesopotamians believed, was to walk a path as winding as the serpent's trail. There's a poetic image here, the serpent as a ribbon of starlight, threading through the dark of human fear and wonder. Its coils spiral like the rivers that fed Mesopotamia, each turn a story of creation, loss, and return. And there's grace in the way the serpent guards without judging, offering its wisdom to those brave enough to seek it. Like a flame held steady in a storm, its presence reassures, even as it challenges. The serpent's role in Mesopotamia wasn't singular. In some tales, it was a creator, like the primeval serpent Tiamat, whose body, slain by the god Marduk, formed the heavens and earth. In others, it was a protector, its venom a shield against chaos. This duality, life-giver and life-taker, made the serpent sacred, a symbol of the balance that held the world together. The Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians wove it into their cosmology, seeing in its sinuous form the rhythm of existence itself. What did it feel like to kneel before a serpent shrine, the air heavy with myrrh and mystery? Did the worshippers feel awe, fear, or something softer, like trust in the cycle of seasons and stars? The question lingers, inviting you to wonder about the symbols that shape your own life. What guardians do you turn to when the path grows dark? The serpent's story in Mesopotamia is a tapestry of contradictions, each thread a glimpse of human longing. It was a healer, yet dangerous, a thief, yet a teacher. Its coils wound through myths of gods and heroes, but also through the quiet moments, a mother's prayer, a scribe's stylus, a farmer's hope for rain. The serpent was a mirror, reflecting the Mesopotamians' belief that wisdom comes not from certainty, but from embracing the unknown. As night falls over Uruk, the ziggurat stands silent, its stones warmed by the day's sun. The priestess extinguishes her lamp, but the serpent's image lingers in her mind, its eyes gleaming like stars. She steps into the cool air. The rivers murmur, a faint echo of the serpent's hiss. This is no Eden, with its single tree and stark choice. Here, the serpent is multitude, its stories as varied as the grains of sand beneath the priestess's feet. There's a moment of grace in this multiplicity, in the way the serpent adapts to each teller's need, like a melody played in different keys. It remains itself while becoming more. The Mesopotamians understood this, carving their serpents not to confine them, but to set them free, letting their meaning flow like the rivers that sustained their world. The serpent's path doesn't end in Mesopotamia. Its coils stretch forward, crossing deserts and seas, appearing in new forms under different skies. But here, in the land between rivers, it taught humanity to see knowledge as a gift worth guarding, even when it stings. As you rest tonight, imagine the serpent's scales catching the light of a distant star, its body a bridge between the earth and the infinite. What secrets might it share if you listened closely? The serpent's coils unwind from Mesopotamia's riverbanks, gliding across deserts to the sun-scorched sands of ancient Egypt, where the Nile breathes life into a world of stone and gold. Around 2600 BCE, in the shadow of Memphis's towering pyramids, pharaohs wore a serpent on their crowns, the uraeus, its hooded form rearing above their brows. This cobra, forged in gold or carved in lapis, was no mere ornament, but a divine emblem, spitting fire to protect the ruler and channel the god's authority. The air in Egypt was heavy with lotus and dust, the Nile's slow pulse a counterpoint to the chants of priests in torchlit temples. Here, the serpent was power incarnate, its gaze a shield against chaos. Imagine a pharaoh, perhaps Djoser, standing on the steps of his newly built step pyramid, the first of its kind. His double crown gleams under the midday sun, the uraeus at its center catching light like a fallen star. The cobra's eyes, inlaid with carnelian, seem to pulse with intent. To the people gathered below, farmers, scribes, stonecutters, the uraeus is more than a symbol, it's a promise. It declares the pharaoh as Horus incarnate, a living god whose rule holds back the desert's encroaching void. The serpent's venom, they believe, burns away enemies, while its presence binds the two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt, into one. The uraeus draws its power from Wadjet, the cobra goddess of Lower Egypt, whose name means the Green One. Temples in the delta city of Buto housed her sacred cobras, fed milk and honey by priestesses who moved like shadows through reed-lined courtyards. Wadjet's myths tell of her nursing the infant Horus, hiding him in marshes from the chaos god Set. Her coils cradled divinity, her hiss a ward against harm. By the Old Kingdom, every pharaoh wore her image, the uraeus, a constant reminder that rulership was both a gift and a burden, balanced on the edge of divine favor. There's a gentle truth here, power, like the serpent, is never simple. It protects, but it also demands. It elevates, yet it isolates. The pharaoh, adorned with the uraeus, stood apart, his humanity tempered by the weight of godhood. Like a palm bending under a storm's weight, he had to yield without breaking, trusting the serpent's fire to guide him. The Egyptians understood this dance, revering the cobra not for its bite, but for what it preserved: order, life, the fragile harmony of Ma'at. Picture a temple at Karnak, its hypostyle hall a forest of columns carved with lotus and papyrus. A priestess anoints a statue of Wadjet, her fingers slick with myrrh, the air thick with the scent of burning resin. The cobra's stone eyes gleam in the flicker of oil lamps, and the priestess whispers a spell, invoking the serpent's protection for the land. Outside, the Nile laps at its banks, its waters reflecting a sky strewn with stars. The serpent's image is everywhere on amulets, tomb walls, the prows of boats, its form a talisman against the unseen. To wear a serpent pendant was to carry Wadjet's strength, to feel her coils encircle your heart. There's a poetic image in this, the uraeus as a flame, small but unyielding, burning at the pharaoh's brow. Its light doesn't banish the dark, but holds it at bay, a reminder that even in the vastness of eternity, a single spark can endure. And there's grace in the way the serpent binds ruler to ruled, its presence a shared vow to uphold the world's balance. Like a thread woven through linen, it ties the divine to the daily, the eternal to the fleeting. The serpent's role in Egypt wasn't limited to the crown. In the Book of the Dead, serpents guard the gates of the underworld, their coils a test for souls seeking eternity. The god Atum, creator of all, took serpent form in the primordial waters, his body a spiral of potential before the world began. Even Apophis, the chaos serpent who battled Ra's solar bark each night, was part of the cosmic order, his defeat ensuring the sun's rise. The Egyptians didn't fear the serpent's duality. They embraced it, seeing in its venom both death and medicine, in its gaze both judgment and mercy. What must it have felt like to stand before the uraeus, knowing its power could save or destroy? Did the pharaoh feel its weight? Not just in gold, but in responsibility, as he faced his people. The question invites you to reflect on the symbols you carry, perhaps a ring, a name, a belief, and what they ask of you. What does it mean to hold power, even over your own small world? The serpent's story in Egypt is one of balance, its coils a delicate equilibrium between chaos and creation. In the temple of Edfu, reliefs show Horus spearing a serpent, yet the same walls honor Wadjet's protective gaze. The Egyptians saw no contradiction here. The serpent was both foe and ally, its nature as fluid as the Nile. This understanding shaped their art, their rituals, their very way of life. To live under the uraeus was to accept that power. Like life, is a cycle rising, falling, renewing. As dusk settles over the Nile, the pyramids cast long shadows across the sand. A fisherman mends his net, a tiny serpent amulet dangling at his throat. He doesn't pray for wealth or glory, only for the river to stay kind, for the stars to guide him home. The uraeus, high on the pharaoh's crown, and the fisherman's humble charm are kin, both born from the same belief the serpent sees what humans cannot, its wisdom older than the stones. There's a moment of grace in this shared faith, in the way the serpent unites king and commoner under its gaze, like a melody hummed in different voices. It resonates across the land, its notes of protection and power blending into one. The Egyptians didn't worship the serpent for its own sake, but for what it revealed about the world, a place where order and chaos dance, where the divine touches the dust. The serpent's path doesn't end in Egypt. Its coils stretch onward, crossing seas and centuries, taking new forms in distant lands. But here, along the Nile, it taught humanity to see power as a sacred trust, to hold it with the same care as a flame in the wind. As you sink deeper into the night, imagine the Uraeus's golden gleam, its eyes watching over a sleeping world. What might it see in you if you met its gaze? The serpent's golden gleam fades from Egypt's Nile, its coils slipping across the Mediterranean to the sun-warmed hills of ancient Greece, where olive trees whisper in the breeze. Around 800 BCE, in the sanctuary of Epidaurus, the serpent entwines the staff of Asclepius, god of healing, its sinuous form a beacon for the sick and weary. The air here is sharp with pine and salt, the marble temples glowing under a sky as blue as lapis. Pilgrims tread softly, their sandals scuffing stone paths, seeking cures in dreams guided by the serpent's quiet wisdom. In Greece, the serpent is no longer a symbol of royal power, but a conduit to wholeness, its gaze piercing the veil between body and soul. Picture a pilgrim, a potter from Athens, his hands cracked from clay and kiln. He lies on a pallet in the Abaton, the sacred dormitory of Asclepius's temple, where the sick await divine visions. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of myrrh and damp earth. A serpent, real or dreamed, slithers across the floor, its scales rasping faintly against stone. The potter's breath catches as it coils near his side, its tongue flickering like a tiny flame. In the morning, he wakes with a lightness he hasn't felt in years, his fever gone, his heart steady. The priests nod knowingly. The serpent, they say, has carried Asclepius's healing touch, its presence a bridge to the divine. Asclepius, born of Apollo's light and mortal blood, was raised by the centaur Chiron, who taught him the secrets of herbs and wounds. His staff, wreathed by a single serpent, became his emblem, a symbol so potent it lingers today in medical insignias. Unlike the caduceus, with its twin snakes and wings, Asclepius's rod is simple, grounded, its serpent a reminder of the earth's quiet power. The Greeks revered snakes as chthonic beings, tied to the underworld and rebirth. They shed their skin, emerging anew, just as the sick hope to cast off illness. In Epidaurus, sacred snakes were tended like honored guests, fed milk and honey, their movements read as omens. There's a gentle truth here. Healing often comes not from force, but from surrender, from trusting the slow work of time and care. The serpent, gliding through the dreamer's sleep, doesn't demand, it offers, its presence a reminder that the body, like the earth, knows how to mend if given space. Like a stream finding its way through stone, healing flows where resistance softens, guided by forces older than our understanding. Imagine the sanctuary at dawn, mist curling through the theater's tiers, the air alive with the hum of bees and distant lyres. A priestess scatters barley before a statue of Asclepius, his stone serpent gleaming with dew. She murmurs prayers, not for miracles but for clarity, for the sick to hear the gods whisper in their dreams. Outside, a mother cradles her child, a clay snake amulet tied to the girl's wrist. The serpent's image is woven into daily life on altars, coins, even the lips of poets like Pindar, who called Asclepius the gentle-handed, his serpent a partner in restoring balance. There's a poetic image in this, the serpent as a thread of moonlight, stitching the broken pieces of a life back together. Its coils are a spiral, endless and turning, like the cycles of pain and recovery that shape us. And there's grace in the way it moves without haste, its silence a lesson in patience, like a lullaby sung to a restless child. The serpent's presence soothes, even as it carries the weight of mystery. The serpent's role in Greece wasn't limited to healing. In Delphi, the Pythia, Apollo's oracle, spoke from a tripod said to rest over the coils of Python, the serpent slain by the god. Her visions, wreathed in laurel smoke, were thought to draw from the serpent's ancient wisdom, its spirit lingering in the earth. The Greeks saw serpents as guardians of sacred places, springs, groves, tombs, their hisses a warning to respect the divine. Yet, in Asclepius's cult, the serpent was intimate, not distant, a companion to those who sought solace. What must it have felt like to lie in the Abaton, the serpent's rustle mingling with your own breath? Did the pilgrims feel fear, hope, or something softer, like trust in the unseen? The question invites you to reflect on your own moments of healing, perhaps a kind word, a quiet night, a hand held in silence. What helped you mend, and what did it ask of you? The serpent's story in Greece is one of intimacy. Its coils a reminder that the divine touches us not in grand gestures, but in whispers, in the small miracles of breath and bone. In Corinth, Kos, and Pergamon, Asclepius's sanctuaries thrived, each with its snakes and stories. The sick left votive offerings, clay limbs, tablets inscribed with thanks, proof of the serpent's quiet work. Even Hippocrates, father of medicine, was said to trace his lineage to Asclepius, his oath a nod to the god's serpent-guided wisdom. As twilight falls over Epidaurus, the sanctuary grows still, the last pilgrims departing with oil lamps flickering. A snake slips into the shadows, its scales catching the glow like a string of pearls. The priests don't follow. They know the serpent belongs to the god, its path as sacred as the stars. The potter, now healed, walks home, his steps lighter, his amulet a weightless reminder of the night he met the divine. There's a moment of grace in this exchange, in the way the serpent gives without taking, its gift as fleeting as a dream, yet as lasting as stone. Like a melody carried on the wind, it lingers in the heart, its notes of hope and renewal blending into one. The Greeks didn't worship the serpent for its power, but for what it revealed: a world where healing is a dance between effort and surrender, between the human and the holy. The serpent's path doesn't end in Greece. Its coils stretch northward, eastward, taking new forms under different skies. But here, in the sanctuaries of Asclepius, it taught humanity to see healing as a sacred act, to trust the body's quiet wisdom. As you rest tonight, imagine the serpent's smooth glide, its eyes like twin moons in the dark. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's gentle rustle fades from Greece's marble sanctuaries, its coils winding northward to the rugged fjords and frost-kissed forests of the Norse world. Around 800 CE, in the shadow of Scandinavia's craggy peaks, the serpent takes a colossal form, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, whose body encircles the earth, its tail clasped in its jaws. The air here is sharp with pine and sea salt, the longhouses glowing with hearth fire as skalds chant tales under a sky streaked with auroras. In Norse mythology, the serpent is neither healer nor guardian, but a force of cosmic tension, its presence a reminder of the world's fragile balance. Imagine a Viking longship cutting through icy waves, its dragon prow carving the mist. A warrior, his beard braided with amber beads, grips the oar, his eyes scanning the horizon. He wears a pendant etched with Jormungandr's coiled form, not for protection, but for courage. The serpent, born of Loki's trickster blood, is Thor's ancient foe, destined to clash at Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. The warrior knows the prophecy, Jormungandr's venom will fell Thor, but the thunder god's hammer will crush the serpent's skull. Their mutual destruction haunts him, yet he prays to face his own end with such defiance. The serpent's image, carved on his ship's hull, steadies his heart against the sea's vast unknown. Jormungandr's myth begins in the prose Edda, where the gods cast the serpent into the ocean, fearing its monstrous growth. There, it grew vast enough to girdle Midgard, the human world, its body a boundary between order and chaos. Unlike Eden's subtle Nashash or Egypt's protective Uraeus, Jormungandr is primal, its scales like slate cliffs, its eyes glowing like sunken stars. The Norse saw it as a symbol of inevitability, its coils a reminder that all things gods, mortals, worlds face an end. Yet, in its endless circle, there's a promise of renewal. For Ragnarok heralds not just destruction, but a new earth rising from the sea. There's a gentle truth here, even in endings. There's a seed of beginning. Jormungandr's clasp of its own tail mirrors the cycles of life, winter yielding to spring, loss giving way to hope, like a fire that consumes a forest only to nourish the soil. The serpent's presence teaches that destruction is not the opposite of creation, but its partner. The Norse embraced this, weaving Jormungandr into their art and stories, not to fear it, but to understand their place in a world both vast and fleeting. Picture a winter night in a chieftain's hall, the air thick with mead and wood smoke. A skald strums a lyre, his voice weaving Jormungandr's tale. The serpent, he sings, holds the world together by holding itself, its jaws a vow to endure. Around the fire, warriors and weavers listen, their faces lit by flickering flames. A child clutches a carved serpent toy, its curves smooth from generations of small hands. The serpent's image adorns shield bosses, rune stones. Even the loom waits spinning wool into thread. To the Norse, Jormungandr was not distant but intimate, a reminder of the forces that bind and break us all. There's a poetic image in this Jormungandr as a chain of midnight, its scales linking sea to sky, earth to eternity. Its coils are a spiral, endless and turning, like the seasons that shape the Norse world. And there's grace in the way it holds the earth without crushing it, its strength a silent vow to preserve until the fated hour. Like a song carried across a frozen lake, the serpent's presence resonates, its notes of power and patience blending into one. The serpent's role in Norse myth wasn't singular. Jormungandr was one of three siblings alongside the wolf Fenrir and the goddess Hel, each a challenge to the god's order. Yet, it was the serpent who defined the world's edges, its body a living horizon. In sagas, Thor's fishing trip to catch Jormungandr stands out. The god hooks the serpent, its thrashing threatening to split the sea, until the giant Hymir cuts the line, fearing the end of days. The tale, carved on runestones like Sweden's Altuna stone, shows the serpent's might, but also its necessity. Without it, the world loses its shape. What must it have felt like to sail under Jormungandr's shadow, knowing the serpent lurked beneath the waves? Did the Vikings feel dread, awe, or something softer, like respect for a foe who defined their courage? The question invites you to reflect on the boundaries in your own life, perhaps a challenge, a fear, a truth you circle but cannot grasp. What holds your world together, and what would it mean to face it? The serpent's story in the Norse world is one of tension. Its coils a balance between holding fast and letting go. In Uppsala's sacred grove, where offerings hung from ancient oaks, serpent motifs curled around ritual cups, their forms a nod to Jormungandr's eternal grip. The Norse didn't pray to the serpent, but honored its place in the cosmic weave, knowing that even gods bow to fate. This acceptance shaped their lives. From the runes they carved to the ships they sailed, each act a defiance of the end they knew would come. As dawn breaks over a fjord, the mist parts to reveal a runestone, its serpent knot framing a warrior's epitaph. A woman, her cloak heavy with frost, traces the carving, her fingers lingering on Jormungandr's curve. She doesn't speak, but her touch is a prayer for strength, for memory, for the world to hold a little longer. The serpent, vast and unseen, feels close, its breath the rhythm of the tide. There's a moment of grace in this quiet reverence, in the way Jormungandr binds the Norse to their fate without judgment. Like a melody played on a single string, it carries the weight of inevitability, its notes of endurance and surrender blending into one. The Norse didn't worship the serpent for its power, but for what it revealed: a world where endings are as sacred as beginnings, where courage is born from facing the inevitable. The serpent's path doesn't end in the Norse seas. Its coils stretch southward, eastward, taking new forms under different stars. But here, in the land of ice and fire, it taught humanity to see boundaries as sacred, to hold the world with the same fierce love as Jormungandr's jaws. As you sink deeper into the night, imagine the serpent's scales glinting beneath a frozen sea, its eyes watching the auroras dance. What might it whisper to you if you met its gaze? The serpent's icy coils loosen from the Norse seas, slithering southward to the sunlit lands of ancient India, where the Ganges flows like a vein of liquid silver. Around 500 BCE, in the verdant groves of Varanasi, the serpent takes a subtler form, Kundalini, the coiled energy said to sleep at the base of the human spine. The air is thick with sandalwood and the hum of mantras, as saffron-robed yogis sit cross-legged, their breath slow as the river's current. Here, the serpent is no external force, but an inner divine. Its awakening a path to spiritual transformation. Its hiss the sound of consciousness stirring. Imagine a young seeker, his hair shaved close, sitting beneath a banyan tree, its roots sprawling like the veins of the earth. His guru, eyes bright as embers, speaks of Kundalini, the coiled one, depicted as a serpent resting in the Muladhara chakra, the root of the body's subtle energy. Through meditation, breath, and discipline, the seeker learns. This serpent can rise, piercing each chakra like a needle threading pearls, until it reaches the crown, uniting the soul with the infinite. The seeker closes his eyes, feeling the warmth at his spine, a faint pulse like a snake stirring in sleep. The world around him cicadas, river lapping, distant bells fades, and he senses the serpent within, its scales a shimmer of potential. In texts like the Upanishads and later tantric traditions, Kundalini is both serpent and goddess, often linked to Shakti, the divine feminine. Her coiled form, 3.5 loops at the spine's base, mirrors the sacred geometry of creation's spiral, cycle, ascent. Yogis described her awakening as a fire, a flood, a lightning bolt, yet always serpentine, moving with a grace that defies the body's limits. The process was not without peril. An unprepared rise could unsettle the mind, like a river bursting its banks. Yet, for those who walked the path, Kundalini promised liberation, a union with Brahman, the universal soul, as intimate as breath. There's a gentle truth here. The greatest journeys begin within, in the quiet spaces we often overlook. Kundalini's coiled sleep is not inertia, but readiness, like a seed waiting for spring. The Serpent teaches that transformation is not forced, but invited, through patience and presence, much like a flower opening to the sun. In India, this inner serpent was revered not as a distant deity, but as a spark of the divine already present, waiting for the seeker's call. Picture a temple by the Ganges, its steps worn smooth by countless feet. A woman in a crimson sari offers a clay lamp to the river, its flame dancing on the water. She wears a pendant shaped like a coiled serpent, a nod to Kundalini's power. Nearby, a sadhu chants, his voice weaving Sanskrit verses that liken the serpent to a river climbing to the sky. The serpent's image is everywhere, carved on temple lintels, painted in mandalas, invoked in hymns. It's not worshipped as a god, but honored as a guide. It's a scent, a map of the soul's potential. There's a poetic image in this Kundalini as a ribbon of dawn, unwinding from the body's root to its crown, each coil a step toward light. Its movement is a spiral, endless and turning, like the cycles of breath that carry us through life. And there's grace in the way it waits, patient as stone, for the moment we're ready to rise. Like a melody hummed in solitude, the serpent's presence soothes, its notes of awakening and unity blending into one. The serpent's role in India wasn't limited to Kundalini. In Vedic myths, serpents like Shesha, the thousand-headed Naga, cradle Vishnu as he dreams the universe into being. His coils a bed of eternity. Nagas, serpent spirits, guard rivers and treasures, their hooded forms carved into cave temples like Ajanta. Yet, Kundalini stands apart, intimate and human, its power not in the heavens, but in the body's quiet depths. The Yoga Sutras and Tantric texts describe practices, pranayama, asanas, meditation to rouse the serpent, each a step toward aligning the self with the cosmos. What must it have felt like to sense Kundalini's stir? A warmth like a candle lit within. Did the yogis feel awe, fear, or something softer, like trust in their own unfolding? The question invites you to reflect on your own inner journeys, perhaps a moment of clarity, a shift in perspective, a quiet strength found in silence. What sleeps within you, waiting to rise? The serpent's story in India is one of ascent. Its coils a ladder from earth to eternity. In the bustling ghats of Varanasi, where life and death mingle like the Ganges currents, Kundalini's presence is a whisper: you are more than your body, more than your fears. Pilgrims bathe in the river, their prayers mingling with the smoke of funeral pyres, and the serpent's image on amulets, in chants, reminds them of the divine spark within. This belief shaped India's spiritual landscape, from the Rigveda's hymns to the tantric rituals of medieval Kashmir. As night falls over Varanasi, the Ganges reflects 1,000 oil lamps, their flames like stars fallen to earth. A yogi sits by the water, his breath slow, his mind tracing the serpent's path. He doesn't seek miracles, only the stillness where the self dissolves into the whole. The serpent, coiled within, feels alive, its pulse a rhythm older than the river. He smiles, knowing the journey is long, but the guide is near. There's a moment of grace in this patience, in the way Kundalini waits for the seeker's readiness. never forcing the path. Like a melody played on a single flute, it carries the weight of eternity, its notes of trust and transformation blending into one. India's Serpent doesn't demand worship, but offers a mirror, showing the divine in the human, the infinite in the fleeting. The serpent's path doesn't end in India. Its coils stretch westward, southward, taking new forms under different skies. But here, in the land of rivers and mantras, it taught humanity to see the body as a temple, the self as a spark of the eternal. As you rest tonight, imagine Kundalini's coiled warmth, its scales a soft glow in the dark. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's inner glow dims along the Ganges, its coils stretching across oceans to the lush jungles and stone cities of the ancient Maya, where the sun burns fierce above the Yucatan. Around 300 CE, in the great city of Tikal, the serpent takes flight as Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, a god whose wings blend earth and sky. The air is heavy with copal smoke and the chatter of macaws. As priests climb pyramid steps, their turquoise headdresses glinting. Here, the serpent is a divine unifier, its feathered form a bridge between the underworld, the human world, and the heavens. Its hiss, the wind that carries prayers to the stars. Imagine a Maya scribe, his fingers stained with red ochre, carving a stela in Tikal's plaza. The stone shows Kukulkan, its serpent body coiled, feathers fanning like a storm cloud. The scribe works by torchlight, the jungle alive with the hum of cicadas and the distant roar of a jaguar. To him, Kukulkan is more than a god. It's the pulse of creation, the force that aligns the cosmos with the calendar's sacred rounds. The serpent's descent down Chichen Itza's pyramid during the equinox, its shadow slithering step by step, is a ritual he's witnessed, a moment when the divine touches the earth. His carving is a prayer, etching Kukulkan's power into stone for generations yet to come. In Maya cosmology, Kukulkan, also called Quetzalcoatl in Aztec lore, was a creator and teacher. The Popol Vuh, the Maya's sacred text, hints at serpent-like deities shaping humanity from maize, their wisdom woven into the stars' patterns. Kukulkan ruled wind, rain, and learning, gifting the Maya knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and writing. Temples like Chichen Itza's El Castillo were built to honor him, their steps aligned with the sun so his shadow could dance at equinoxes, a living symbol of time's cycle. The serpent's feathers, unlike the scales of Jormungandr or Kundalini, gave it flight, making it a mediator between realms, carrying human hopes to the gods. There's a gentle truth here. Connection is the root of meaning, whether between earth and sky or heart and hope. Kukulkan's feathered form reminds us that boundaries between worlds, selves, or dreams are not walls but thresholds, crossed by those who dare to reach. Like a river joining two shores, the serpent unites, its wings a promise that no part of existence is truly separate. The Maya lived this truth, their cities and rituals designed to mirror the cosmos, with Kukulkan as their guide. Picture Chichen Itza at dawn, the pyramid's limestone glowing pink as the first light spills over the jungle. A priest scatters maize kernels, their golden arcs catching the sun, while chanting Kukulkan's name. Around him, families gather, their tunics embroidered with serpent motifs, their eyes fixed on the pyramid's steps, waiting for the serpent's shadow to appear. The serpent's image is everywhere on pottery, jade pendants, The ball court's rings, its feathers a symbol of aspiration, its coils a reminder of the earth's embrace. To invoke Kukulkan was to call on the wind that brings rain, the stars that guide planting, the wisdom that builds cities. There's a poetic image in this Kukulkan as a thread of sunlight, woven through the jungle's green heart, its feathers shimmering like a dawn that never fades. Its flight is a spiral, endless and turning, like the cycles of equinox and harvest that shaped Maya life. And there's grace in the way it bridges worlds, its wings a silent vow to carry prayers upward while rooting worshippers to the earth. Like a song sung across a cenote's still water, the serpent's presence resonates, its notes of unity and wonder blending into one. The serpent's role in Maya culture wasn't limited to Kukulkan. Serpent imagery adorned warriors' shields, symbolizing strength, and lined sacred cenotes, guarding the underworld's gates. The vision serpent, summoned in rituals with blood offerings, appeared in smoke or dreams, its jaws a portal to ancestors or gods. Yet, Kukulkan stood apart, a deity of balance, his feathers softening the serpent's primal edge, his wisdom guiding kings and farmers alike. The Dresden Codex, a Maya book, shows him entwined with constellations, his form a map of the heavens' dance. What must it have felt like to watch Kukulkan's shadow descend? The pyramid alive with divine motion, did the Maya feel awe, certainty, or something softer, like trust in the world's order? The question invites you to reflect on the moments you've felt connected to something larger, perhaps a sunset, a shared silence, a truth glimpsed in passing. What bridges your world to the infinite, and how do you honor it? The serpent's story in the Maya world is one of harmony. Its feathers a reminder that the divine is not distant, but woven into stone, sky, and soil. In Palenque, Copan, and Uxmal, Kukulkan's image adorned temples, its coils framing doorways to the sacred. The Maya didn't fear the serpent's power. They celebrated it, building their lives around its rhythms, planting with the rains, charting stars, marking time. This reverence shaped their art, their science, their very way of seeing, each act a nod to the serpent's unifying grace. As dusk settles over Tikal, the jungle grows quiet, the pyramids casting long shadows across the plaza. A girl, her hair braided with jade beads, traces a serpent carving on a low wall, her fingers lingering on its feathers. She doesn't pray for miracles, only for the rains to come, for her family's maize to grow. The serpent, high on the temple's frieze and small in her touch, feels alive, its wings the breath of the wind. She smiles, knowing the world is held together by such connections, fragile yet enduring. There's a moment of grace in this simplicity, in the way Kukulkan links the grand and the humble, the cosmic and the daily. Like a melody carried by a flute across the jungle, it lingers in the heart, its notes of balance and belonging blending into one. The Maya didn't worship the serpent for its might, but for what it revealed: a world where every part, from star to seed, sings in chorus. The serpent's path doesn't end in the Maya lands. Its coils stretch northward, westward, taking new forms under different suns. But here, in the jungle's emerald embrace, it taught humanity to see the world as one, each piece connected by the serpent's feathered flight. As you rest tonight, imagine Kukulkan's wings brushing the stars, its scales warm with the earth's heartbeat. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's feathered wings fade from the Maya's jungle temples, its coils gliding across seas to the vibrant lands of West Africa, where the Dahomey kingdom thrived along the Gulf of Guinea. Around 1600 CE, in the bustling city of Abomey, the serpent emerges as Dan, the rainbow serpent, a divine spirit weaving life and creation. The air is thick with palm oil and the rhythm of drums, as priests dance in courtyards, their robes swirling under a sky heavy with monsoon clouds. Here, the serpent is a cosmic force, its iridescent body arcing across the heavens, uniting earth, sky, and spirit in a dance of eternal renewal. Imagine a Dahomey priestess, her wrists adorned with cowrie shells, standing before a shrine of Dan, its mud walls painted with serpent coils that shimmer like wet river stones. She pours libations of millet beer, the liquid pooling in the earth, and chants to the serpent, her voice rising with the wind. Dan, known as Damballa in Vodou traditions, is the oldest of the LWO, the spirits revered in Dahomey's Vodun religion. His rainbow form, stretching from horizon to horizon, is said to carry the waters of life, nourishing crops and souls alike. The priestess feels his presence, a warmth like sunlight breaking through clouds, as she prays for her people's prosperity. In Dahomey mythology, Dan is both creator and sustainer, his serpentine body the foundation of existence. Oral traditions describe him as the force that shaped the world, his coils molding rivers and mountains, his breath the rains that feed the yam fields. Unlike Jormungandr's destructive might or Kukulkan's celestial flight, Dan is gentle, paternal. His rainbow hues a promise of harmony. Shrines to him dot the landscape, often near rivers or sacred groves, where offerings of white cloth, eggs, and chalk honor his purity. To invoke Dan is to call on the source of life itself, the serpent's arc, a bridge between the physical and the divine. There's a gentle truth here. Life thrives in connection, in the delicate balance of giving and receiving. Dan's rainbow form teaches that creation is not a solitary act, but a chorus. Each part, rain, soil, human heart, singing in unison, like a tree whose roots entwine with the earth. The serpent reminds us that we are sustained by what we nurture. The Dahomey people lived this truth, their rituals and daily lives woven with gratitude for the serpent's life-giving presence. Picture Abomey's market at midday, the air alive with the scent of roasted maize and the chatter of traders. A healer, her basket brimming with herbs, wears a serpent amulet carved from ebony, its curves smooth as a river's bend. She murmurs to Dan, seeking his wisdom to soothe a child's fever. Nearby, a drummer beats a rhythm that mimics the serpent's slither, his hands a blur as dancers sway, their movements echoing Dan's fluid grace. The serpent's image is everywhere on palace walls, woven into kente cloth, etched into calabash gourds, its rainbow arc a symbol of hope, its coils a reminder of life's unbroken cycle. There's a poetic image in this Dan as a ribbon of light, his colors bleeding into the sky like a promise kept after a storm. His coils are a spiral, endless and turning, like the seasons that shape the Dahomey world. And there's grace in the way he cradles life without possessing it, his presence a silent vow to sustain without control, like a lullaby sung over a sleeping village. The serpent's arc soothes, its notes of unity and renewal blending into one. The serpent's role in Dahomey wasn't limited to Dan. Other serpents, like the sacred pythons of Ouida's Python Temple, were revered as earthly embodiments of the divine, their movements read as omens. Devotees tended these snakes with care, draping them in white cloth and feeding them milk, believing their touch brought blessings. Yet, Dan stood apart, his rainbow form a cosmic ideal, embodying the Vodun principle of interconnectedness. The Fon people, who built Dahomey, saw him as a partner in creation, his serpentine path mirrored in their art, music, and dance, each a celebration of life's vibrant web. What must it have felt like to stand under Dan's rainbow, the sky alive with color and promise? Did the Dahomey people feel awe, peace, or something softer, like trust in the world's goodness? The question invites you to reflect on the moments you've felt part of something larger, perhaps a shared laugh, a quiet sunrise, a hand extended in kindness. What sustains you, and how do you give back to it? The Serpent's story in Dahomey is one of creation, its rainbow arc a reminder that life is a gift, fragile yet resilient. In royal palaces and village shrines, Dan's image united the sacred and the daily, his coils framing rituals that honored ancestors, seasons, and spirits. The Dahomey didn't fear the serpent's power, they embraced it, weaving it into their cosmology as a symbol of continuity. This reverence shaped their culture, from the Gallade masks celebrating fertility to the oral histories passed down by griots, each tale a thread in Dan's radiant tapestry. As twilight falls over Abomey, the drums grow quiet, the air cooling as stars prick the sky. A young girl, her hair adorned with beads, kneels by a stream, offering a white pebble to Dan. She doesn't ask for miracles, only for her family's health, for the rains to be kind. The serpent, vast as the sky, yet close as the water's ripple, feels near, its colors lingering in her heart. She rises, her bare feet steady on the earth, knowing the world is held by such small acts of faith. There's a moment of grace in this simplicity, in the way Dan binds the grand and the humble, the cosmic and the human, like a melody carried by a breeze across the savannah. It lingers in the soul, its notes of connection and care blending into one. The Dahomey didn't worship the serpent for its grandeur, but for what it revealed: a world where every life, every drop of rain, is part of a greater whole. The serpent's path doesn't end in Dahomey. Its coils stretch across continents, taking new forms under different stars. But here, in the land of drums and rainbows, it taught humanity to see life as a web, each thread vital to the pattern. As you rest tonight, imagine Dan's radiant arc, its colors soft against the night. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's rainbow arc fades from Dahomey's vibrant skies, its coils winding across time to the shadowed halls of medieval Europe, where alchemists toiled in flickering candlelight. Around 1200 CE, in a stone-walled scriptorium in Toledo, the serpent emerges as the Ouroboros, a snake devouring its own tail, etched in manuscripts dense with cryptic symbols. The air is sharp with ink and molten lead, the silence broken by the scratch of quills and the soft clink of glass vials. Here, the serpent is a cipher of transformation, its circular form a key to the alchemical quest for enlightenment, its endless cycle a mirror of death and rebirth. Imagine an alchemist, his robes stained with soot, hunched over a parchment in a cluttered chamber. His eyes, weary from sleepless nights, trace the Ouroboros drawn in verdigris ink, its scales forming a perfect ring. The symbol, rooted in ancient Egyptian and Greek thought, had slithered into Europe via Arabic texts, carrying the promise of the philosopher's stone, a substance to transmute lead into gold and grant eternal life. To the alchemist, the Ouroboros is no mere snake, but a map of the cosmos. Its self-devouring act, a paradox destruction creates. Endings birth beginnings. He stirs a crucible, the fumes sharp as winter frost, and whispers a Latin prayer, seeking the serpent's wisdom to unlock nature's secrets. In alchemical lore, the Ouroboros embodied the principle of solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate, the process of breaking down matter to rebuild it anew. Texts like the Chrysopoeia of Cleopatra, a 2nd century work rediscovered in the Middle Ages, depict the Ouroboros encircling the words, "One is all." To alchemists, this serpent was the universe in miniature, its cycle reflecting the soul's journey from ignorance to wisdom. It appeared in woodcuts, on furnace doors, even in dreams. Its form a reminder that transformation requires sacrifice, just as the snake consumes itself to be reborn. There's a gentle truth here. Change is a circle, not a line, and what we lose in the fire returns in a new form. The Ouroboros teaches that endings are not final but fertile, like soil enriched by fallen leaves. The alchemists, in their quest for gold, sought not just wealth but understanding, trusting the serpent's cycle to guide them through the dark. This faith, quiet as a candle's flame, sustained them, even when their experiments failed. Picture a marketplace in Toledo at dusk, the air thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and damp wool. A bookseller, his stall lit by a single lantern, offers a tome with an Ouroboros embossed on its cover, its tail a spiral of faded gold. Nearby, a healer mixes potions, muttering of the serpent's cycle as she blends mercury and sulfur, believing their union mirrors the soul's purification. The Ouroboros is everywhere, etched on amulets, scratched into cathedral stones. Whispered in esoteric circles, its form a symbol of hope, its loop a promise that nothing is truly lost. There's a poetic image in this, the Ouroboros as a ring of starlight, its scales shimmering like a galaxy spinning in the void. Its cycle is a spiral, endless and turning, like the seasons that shape the human heart. And there's grace in the way it holds both death and birth, its jaws a silent vow to renew what is consumed, like a melody played on a lute in a quiet room. The serpent's presence resonates, its notes of transformation and unity blending into one. The serpent's role in alchemy wasn't limited to the Ouroboros. Other serpents, like the winged dragon or the basilisk, symbolized stages of the great work, their forms shifting with each chemical process. Yet, the Ouroboros stood apart, its simplicity profound. In texts like the Emerald Tablet, attributed to the mythical Hermes Trismegistus, it represented the unity of matter and spirit, the earthly and the divine. Alchemists like Paracelsus saw it as a guide, its cycle a reminder that the soul, like lead, could be refined into something luminous. What must it have felt like to gaze at the Ouroboros, its endless loop a challenge to mortal limits? Did the alchemists feel frustration, awe, or something softer, like trust in the process? The question invites you to reflect on your own cycles of change, perhaps a loss reborn as strength, a failure that led to insight. What have you let go of, and what grew in its place? The serpent's story in alchemy is one of renewal, its circular form a reminder that transformation is not a destination, but a rhythm. In Paris, Prague, and Florence, alchemists' workshops buzzed with the serpent's influence, its image framing their furnaces and philosophies. They didn't seek the Ouroboros for its own sake, but for what it revealed: a world where every end is a beginning, where the mundane can become miraculous. This belief shaped their art, their science, their quiet prayers, each experiment a step in the serpent's eternal dance. As midnight falls over Toledo, the alchemist sets down his quill, his chamber lit only by a dying ember. He traces the Ouroboros once more, its ink faded, but its meaning sharp. Outside, the city sleeps, the stars wheeling above tiled roofs. The serpent, small on the page yet vast in his mind, feels alive, its cycle a pulse beneath the world's skin. He breathes deeply, knowing the stone may elude him, but the serpent's wisdom endures. There's a moment of grace in this persistence, in the way the Ouroboros binds the alchemist's small life to the cosmos's grand sweep. Like a melody carried by a river through the night, it lingers in the soul, its notes of patience and possibility blending into one. The alchemists didn't worship the serpent for its mystery, but for what it revealed: a world where change is sacred, where every loss holds the seed of return. The serpent's path doesn't end in the alchemist's chamber. Its coils stretch forward, taking new forms under different lights. But here, in the flicker of medieval Europe, it taught humanity to see transformation as a cycle, to trust the fire that burns and builds. As you rest tonight, imagine the Ouroboros's endless loop, its scales warm with the glow of stars. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's circular glow dims in the alchemist's candle-lit chamber, its coils slithering into the shadowed corners of folklore, where tales are spun by firelight across countless cultures. From the misty hills of Ireland to the sun-baked villages of the Andes, around 1500 CE and beyond, the serpent emerges as a trickster, a cunning guide weaving through stories told by elders to wide-eyed listeners. The air is rich with wood smoke and the tang of earth, as voices rise and fall, carrying the serpent's wily spirit. Here, it's neither god nor symbol, but a character. Its cleverness shaping human fate, its hissing laughter a challenge to outwit the world's mysteries. Imagine a storyteller in a West African village, her hands tracing shapes in the air as children huddle close, the night alive with crickets. She speaks of Anansi, the spider trickster, but tonight her tale shifts to a serpent, sleek as a river, who tricks a greedy king into sharing his gold with the poor. The serpent, she says, slipped into the king's dreams, its scales glinting like coins, and whispered riddles until he woke. Humbled, the children giggle, their eyes reflecting the fire's glow, but the story lingers, teaching them that wit, not force, can bend the powerful. Across the ocean, in an Andean hamlet, another teller describes a serpent who fools a cruel farmer, leading him to a cave of maize that feeds his starving neighbors. The serpent's guile, in every tale, is a spark, igniting change where strength alone fails. In folklore, the serpent's trickster role is universal yet varied. In Native American stories, like those of the Cherokee, a serpent might deceive a hunter, only to teach him respect for the forest's balance. In Slavic tales, a snake outsmarts a miser, its coils hiding wisdom beneath mischief. Unlike Dan's nurturing rainbow or the Ouroboros's cosmic cycle, the trickster serpent is earthy, flawed, human in its cunning. It doesn't command worship, it invites laughter, reflection, even unease. Its stories, passed down through generations, are less about divine power than about survival, how to navigate a world of greed, pride, and unpredictability with a serpent's sly grace. There's a gentle truth here, cleverness, tempered by heart, can shift the world's weight. The trickster serpent doesn't conquer, it persuades, using riddles and ruses to reveal what's hidden: kindness in a miser, justice in a tyrant. Like a breeze that nudges a leaf to fall, its influence is subtle but sure, reminding us that power lies in seeing clearly, not striking hardest. The storytellers knew this, weaving the serpent's wit into tales that taught without preaching, their lessons as lasting as stone. Picture a Celtic fireside in a sod-roofed hut, the air heavy with peat and damp wool. A bard, his fingers calloused from the harp, tells of a serpent who tricks a warlord into sparing a sacred grove, its tongue flicking riddles that unravel the man's pride. The listeners, farmers and weavers, nod, their brooches etched with serpent knots, symbols of wisdom's winding path. In a distant Yoruba village, a mother whispers a tale of a snake who outwits a thief, its coils leading him to return stolen yams. The serpent's image is everywhere on carved stools, woven baskets, even children's games. Its mischief, a mirror of human ingenuity, its tricks, a guide to living well. There's a poetic image in this, the trickster serpent as a thread of moonlight darting through the dark, its scales catching the flicker of human hope. Its path is a spiral, endless and turning, like the stories that shift with each telling. And there's grace in the way it challenges without harming, its laughter a silent vow to wake the sleeping heart. Like a melody hummed by a traveler on a lonely road, the serpent's presence delights, its notes of cunning and compassion blending into one. The serpent's role as trickster wasn't singular. In some tales, it's a villain, its tricks cruel, like the snake who lures a child from safety in a grim fairy tale. In others, it's a hero, like the serpent who saves a village by deceiving a monster in a Japanese legend. This duality, foe or friend, made the serpent a perfect trickster, its nature as fluid as the rivers it often haunts in stories. Across cultures, from the Hausa of Nigeria to the Aymara of Bolivia, the serpent's guile reflected humanity's own, its stories a way to wrestle with ambition, morality, and the unexpected. What must it have felt like to hear a serpent's tale, its tricks unfolding like a game you might win or lose? Did the listeners feel amusement, caution, or something softer, like recognition of their own cleverness? The question invites you to reflect on the tricks you've played or faced, perhaps a white lie that spared a hurt, a clever fix to a problem, a moment you outsmarted your fears. What did those moments teach you, and how did they shape your path? The serpent's story in folklore is one of wit, its coils a reminder that the world rewards those who think as nimbly as they act. In marketplaces, longhouses, and desert camps, the trickster's tales united listeners, their laughter a bond across time and place. The serpent didn't demand reverence, it earned it, its mischief a lens for seeing the world's flaws and possibilities. This legacy shaped oral traditions, from the Anansi cycles of the Ashanti to the coyote and snake tales of the Navajo, each story a nod to the serpent's sly wisdom. As midnight settles over a village, the storyteller's voice softens, the fire reduced to embers. A boy, clutching a carved serpent stick, lingers by the hearth, replaying the tale of the snake who tricked a king. He doesn't pray for cunning, only for the wit to face tomorrow's challenges: a sick goat, a flooded field. The serpent, small in his hand yet vast in his mind, feels alive, its tricks a spark in the dark. He grins, knowing the world is full of riddles, and he's ready to try his hand. There's a moment of grace in this quiet confidence, in the way the trickster serpent empowers without overwhelming, its lessons light as a feather yet strong as bone, like a melody carried by a river through the night. It lingers in the heart, its notes of humor and humanity blending into one. The storytellers didn't exalt the serpent for its tricks, but for what they revealed: a world where wit and heart can outshine brute strength, where every challenge hides a chance to grow. The serpent's path doesn't end in the storyteller's circle. Its coils stretch onward, taking new forms under modern lights. But here, in the glow of ancient tales, it taught humanity to see cunning as a tool, not a weapon, to navigate life with a serpent's clever grace. As you rest tonight, imagine the trickster's glinting eyes, its tongue flicking with a riddle just for you. What might it whisper? If you listened closely, the serpent's mischievous glint fades from the storyteller's fire-lit circle, its coils slithering into the modern world, where science and psychology cast new light on its ancient form. By the late 19th century, in the gaslit lecture halls of Vienna and the quiet studies of London, around 1890 CE, the serpent reappears. No longer a god or trickster, but a symbol of the mind's hidden depths. The air is thick with tobacco smoke and the scratch of fountain pens, as thinkers like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung unravel the serpent's meaning in dreams and archetypes. Here, it's a bridge to the unconscious, its sinuous shape a key to understanding humanity's inner world, its hiss the whisper of instincts long buried. Imagine a young analyst, her notebook open on a polished oak desk, listening to a patient recount a dream of a serpent coiled in a garden. The room, lined with leather-bound books, smells of wax and winter air seeping through a cracked window. To her, trained in Freud's theories, the serpent might symbolize repressed desires, its phallic form a nod to primal urges tangled in the psyche. But she's also read Jung, who saw the serpent as an archetype, a universal image of transformation and wisdom, echoing the Ouroboros or Kundalini. She jots a note, wondering what the serpent means to her patient: a fear, a longing, or a call to face the unknown. The serpent, she knows, is never just a snake. It's a mirror, reflecting the mind's uncharted terrain. In Freud's psychoanalytic framework, the serpent often carried sexual undertones. Its slithering form tied to instincts society tames but never fully silences. His interpretation of dreams hints at such symbols, though he rarely lingered on the serpent alone. Jung, however, embraced it fully, seeing it in myths: Eden's Nashash, Jormungandr, Dan, as a collective symbol of renewal and shadow. In his Red Book, Jung sketched serpents, their coils spiraling like the psyche's journey toward individuation, the process of integrating light and dark within. To modern thinkers, the serpent became a tool, not to worship, but to probe, its image a way to map the soul's quiet currents. There's a gentle truth here: what lies hidden within us holds the key to growth. The serpent, lurking in dreams or symbols, invites us to face our shadows, not to banish them, but to learn their language. Like a river flowing beneath ice, the unconscious shapes us, and the serpent, with its ancient wisdom, offers a way to listen. Freud and Jung, despite their differences, agreed on this: the mind, like the serpent, is both familiar and strange, a paradox we must embrace to live fully. Picture a 1920s London cafe, the air buzzing with clinking cups and modernist chatter. A psychologist, his tweed jacket frayed, sketches a serpent on a napkin, explaining to a poet how it symbolizes the ID's raw energy or the self's quest for wholeness. Across the city, a patient lies on a couch, describing a serpent dream to her analyst, its scales glinting like coins. The serpent's image is everywhere in art, where surrealists paint its coils, in literature, where D.H. Lawrence calls it a lord of life, even in medicine, where Asclepius's rod still marks healing. It's no longer a deity, but a question, asking what lies beneath our daily masks. There's a poetic image in this, the serpent as a thread of dusk, weaving through the mind's unlit corners, its scales catching the flicker of buried truths. Its path is a spiral, endless and turning, like the thoughts that circle before clarity dawns. And there's grace in the way it waits, patient as stone, for us to meet its gaze without fear. Like a melody hummed in a quiet room, the serpent's presence soothes, its notes of insight and acceptance blending into one. The serpent's role in modernity wasn't limited to psychology. In biology, scientists like Darwin saw snakes as marvels of adaptation, their limbless grace a testament to evolution's ingenuity. In medicine, snake venom became a paradox, harming yet healing, its proteins used in drugs for heart disease, yet it's in the psyche that the serpent's ancient power endures. Jung's seminars on mythology linked it to alchemy's Ouroboros, India's Kundalini, Africa's Dan, showing how its archetype transcends time. To modern seekers, from therapists' offices to meditation retreats, the serpent remains a guide, its form a reminder that the unconscious speaks in symbols, not straight lines. What must it have felt like to meet the serpent in a dream, its eyes holding yours across the mind's divide? Did it spark curiosity, unease, or something softer, like recognition of a truth you've always known? The question invites you to reflect on your own inner world, perhaps a recurring thought, a fleeting image, a feeling you can't name. What might it reveal if you followed its trail? The serpent's story in modernity is one of rediscovery. Its coils a reminder that the ancient and the new are not so far apart. In university halls, art studios, and quiet therapy rooms, the serpent's image united thinkers, its archetype a lens for seeing the self anew. It didn't demand belief. It offered perspective, its presence a way to navigate the chaos of modern life. This legacy shaped disciplines, from psychoanalysis to comparative mythology, each a nod to the serpent's quiet wisdom. As twilight falls over Vienna, the analyst closes her notebook, the patient's dream lingering like a half-remembered song. Outside, the city hums, trams rattling, streetlights flickering on. The serpent, small in her notes, yet vast in her thoughts, feels alive, its coils a map of the mind's hidden rivers. She steps into the evening, her breath visible in the chill, knowing the serpent's work is never done, its questions as vital now as in Eden's dawn. There's a moment of grace in this continuity, in the way the serpent binds past to present, myth to mind. Like a melody carried by a breeze through city streets, it lingers in the heart, its notes of curiosity and courage blending into one. The modern world didn't tame the serpent, it listened, finding in its ancient form a guide to the soul's endless journey. The serpent's path doesn't end in the analyst's study. Its coils stretch forward, taking new forms under shifting lights. But here, in the dawn of modern thought, it taught humanity to see the mind as a sacred space, its depths as rich as any temple. As you rest tonight, imagine the serpent's glinting scales, its eyes soft in the dark of your dreams. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's introspective shimmer fades from the analyst's quiet study, its coils weaving through the tapestry of human thought to emerge as a symbol of duality, balancing creation and destruction in a delicate embrace. By the 20th century, in the bustling libraries of Cairo and the wind-swept ruins of ancient sites worldwide, around 1950 CE, scholars and mystics alike pondered the serpent's twin nature. The air is heavy with old paper and desert dust, the hum of ceiling fans blending with the murmur of debate. Here, the serpent is neither god nor trickster, but a paradox, its scales reflecting both life's generative spark and its inevitable end. Its hiss, a reminder of the harmony woven into existence's contradictions. Imagine an archaeologist, her hands dusted with ochre, kneeling in a Mesopotamian dig site, uncovering a clay tablet etched with a serpent coiled around a tree. The sun beats down, the air sharp with the scent of dry earth and tamarisk. To her, the serpent recalls Ningish Zida, the Sumerian guardian of growth, but also Tiamat, the chaos serpent whose death birthed the world. She traces the carving, marveling at how one creature holds both nurture and ruin. Later, in a Cairo lecture hall, she shares her find, linking it to Egypt's Wadjet, who protects, and Apophis, who threatens, each serpent a facet of the same cosmic balance. The serpent, she argues, is a mirror of life itself, creating, destroying, and creating anew. Across cultures, the serpent's duality is a constant thread. In Eden, it offered knowledge, yet brought exile. In Greece, it healed through Asclepius, but guarded the underworld's gates. Jormungandr held the Norse world together, yet its battle with Thor promised Ragnarok's end. This twin-nature life-giver and life-taker resonates in myths from the Maya's Kukulkan, who brings rain but demands sacrifice, to Dahome's Dan, whose rainbow nurtures yet warns of nature's power. By the 20th century, scholars like Mircea Eliade saw the serpent as a universal symbol, its dual role a key to understanding humanity's dance with creation and decay. There's a gentle truth here. Balance is not the absence of conflict, but the weaving of opposites into wholeness. The serpent's duality teaches that destruction is not an enemy, but a partner, clearing space for new growth, like a forest fire that scatters seeds. Embracing this paradox, as ancient cultures did, allows us to live with life's tensions, finding peace in their interplay. The serpent, with its quiet presence, shows us how to hold both joy and sorrow, gain and loss, in the same tender grasp. Picture a marketplace in Delhi, the air alive with turmeric and the clatter of rickshaws. A vendor, his stall draped with serpent charms, tells a buyer how snakes bring luck, but also warn of danger, their venom both poison and cure. Across the globe, in a Peruvian village, a weaver threads a serpent into her tapestry, its green scales for fertility, its red eyes for vigilance. The serpent's image is everywhere on museum plaques, in anthropology texts, even in tattoos curling around modern wrists, its dual nature a reminder that life thrives in tension, not resolution. To honor the serpent is to accept that every act of creation carries the seed of its undoing, and every end holds a spark of beginning. There's a poetic image in this, the serpent as a twilight thread, its scales blending dawn's gold with dusk's indigo, stitching life's opposites into one. Its path is a spiral, endless and turning, like the cycles of growth and decay that shape the world. And there's grace in the way it carries both light and shadow. Its coils a silent vow to hold the whole without breaking, like a melody played on a sitar at dusk. The serpent's presence resonates, its notes of harmony and acceptance blending into one. The serpent's dual role wasn't merely symbolic. In practical life, snakes embodied this balance their venom killed, yet healers from Egypt to India used it to cure. Their shedding skin signaled renewal, yet their bite warned of death. Anthropologists studying cultures from the Amazon to Southeast Asia noted how serpents were revered and feared, often in the same breath. In rituals, a snake might be a deity's vessel, as in Vodun's Python temples, or a test of courage, as in some Aboriginal rites. This duality made the serpent a universal archetype, its image a way to grapple with life's inherent contradictions. What must it have felt like to stand before a serpent's image, knowing it could both save and slay? Did it spark wonder, unease, or something softer, like awe at life's complexity? The question invites you to reflect on the dualities in your own world, perhaps a choice that brought both gain and loss, a love that held both joy and pain. How do you find balance in the tensions that shape you? The serpent's story in this era is one of synthesis, its dual nature a reminder that life's opposites are not at war but in conversation. In academic journals, museum exhibits, and spiritual retreats, the serpent's image united thinkers, its paradox a lens for seeing the world anew. It didn't demand resolution, it offered perspective, its presence a way to navigate the push and pull of existence. This legacy shaped modern understanding, from comparative religion to ecological studies, each a nod to the serpent's quiet wisdom. As night falls over Cairo, the archaeologist sits by the Nile, her notebook open, the river's ripple catching the moon's glow. She sketches the serpent from the tablet, its coils a perfect balance of curve and countercurve. The city hums traffic, voices, a distant muezzin's call, but the serpent, small in her drawing, yet vast in her thoughts, feels alive, its duality a pulse beneath the world's skin. She breathes deeply, knowing the serpent's lesson is not to choose between creation and destruction, but to embrace both as one. There's a moment of grace in this acceptance, in the way the serpent binds life's contradictions into a single, luminous whole, like a melody carried by the river through the dark. It lingers in the heart, its notes of balance and beauty blending into one. The scholars didn't exalt the serpent for its power, but for what it revealed: a world where every end is a beginning, where harmony lives in the space between opposites. The serpent's path doesn't end in the scholar's musings. Its coils stretch onward, taking new forms under timeless stars. But here, in the crossroads of ancient and modern thought, it taught humanity to see duality as sacred, to hold life's tensions with the serpent's steady grace. As you rest tonight, imagine the serpent's twin scales, one bright with dawn, one dark with dusk, its eyes soft in the night. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's balanced coils unwind from the scholar's moonlit reflections, gliding into the sacred spaces of ancient rituals, where its form channels the divine across cultures and centuries. From the torchlit caves of Crete to the palm-fringed shrines of Benin, spanning roughly 2000 BCE to 1700 CE, the serpent is honored in rites that pulse with drumbeats and whispered prayers. The air is thick with frankincense and sweat, the earth beneath bare feet warm from offerings burned to ash. Here, the serpent is a conduit, its sinuous body a living bridge to the gods. its hiss a call to transcend the ordinary and touch the eternal. Imagine a Minoan priestess, her linen skirt swaying, descending into a subterranean shrine on Crete around 1600 BCE. The walls are painted with serpents, their scales curling like waves, and she holds a clay snake in each hand, their cool weight grounding her. The air hums with chants, the scent of honeyed wine mingling with damp stone. To her, the serpent is a vessel of the great goddess, its coils channeling fertility and wisdom from the earth's womb. She raises the snakes, their tongues flickering, and the gathered worshippers gasp, feeling the divine draw near. In this moment, the serpent is not just a creature, but a current, carrying prayers to the unseen, its presence a spark that lights the soul. Across time and continents, serpent rituals share this sacred thread. In Dahomey's Vodun temples, priests drape pythons over their shoulders, the snake's slow glide a sign of Dambala's blessing, their touch healing the sick. In ancient India, Naga altars by rivers receive milk and flowers, honoring serpent spirits who guard the waters. The Greeks offered cakes to snakes in Asclepius's sanctuaries, believing their slither brought dreams of cure. These rites, whether in Mesoamerica's cenotes or Australia's dreaming tracks, revered the serpent as a mediator, its body a path between human longing and divine response. The act of offering, be it blood, grain, or song, made the serpent a partner, its form a doorway to the sacred. There's a gentle truth here. Ritual connects us to what lies beyond, not by force but by surrender, opening the heart to mystery. The serpent, in its quiet power, teaches that the divine is not distant but near, woven into the earth's pulse and our own breath. Like a river reflecting the stars, it carries our intentions upward while rooting us to the moment. These ancient rites, with their serpentine focus, remind us that reverence is a conversation, a way to listen as much as to speak. Picture a Yoruba festival in 17th century Nigeria, the air alive with kola nuts and the rhythm of bata drums. A devotee, her face painted with white chalk, dances with a serpent coiled around her arm, its scales gleaming like polished jet. She moves as if guided, her steps a prayer to Ocean Mare, the rainbow serpent who links earth to sky. Around her, the crowd sways, their voices rising, serpent amulets glinting at their throats. The serpent's image is everywhere on shrine roofs, woven into mats, carved into staffs, its form a symbol of communion, its glide a reminder that the divine flows through all things. To join the rite is to step into the serpent's dance, to feel the world's heartbeat underfoot. There's a poetic image in this, the serpent as a thread of firelight, weaving through the dark of human fear, its scales catching the glow of sacred intent. Its path is a spiral, endless and turning, like the cycles of prayer and response that shape devotion. And there's grace in the way it carries offerings without judgment. Its coils a silent vow to bridge the mortal and the divine, like a melody sung by a chorus under moonlight. The serpent's presence uplifts, its notes of connection and reverence blending into one. The serpent's role in rituals wasn't merely symbolic. Its physical presence lives snakes in Minoan or Vodun rites. Carved effigies in Maya ceremonies made the divine tangible, its movement a sign of approval or warning. In some cultures, like the Hopi of North America, snake dances invoked rain, the serpents released to carry prayers to the clouds. In others, like ancient China, serpent motifs on bronze vessels honored ancestors, their coils a link to the past. This intimacy, The serpent's willingness to join the rite made it unique, its form a vessel for the sacred that both awed and comforted. What must it have felt like to hold a serpent in a ritual, its cool scales against your skin, its gaze meeting yours? Did it spark awe, trust, or something softer, like a sense of being seen by the divine? The question invites you to reflect on your own moments of connection, perhaps a quiet prayer, a shared ceremony, a time you felt part of something vast. What opened that door for you, and what did it reveal? The serpent's story in these rituals is one of communion. Its coils a reminder that the sacred is not separate, but woven into life's fabric. In temples, groves, and village squares, the serpent's image united worshippers, its presence a way to touch the eternal in the fleeting. It didn't demand perfection, it offered a path. Its role in rites a bridge across cultures, from Crete's labyrinths to Benin's Python shrines. This legacy shaped spiritual practices, each offering a nod to the serpent's quiet power. As dawn breaks over a Benin shrine, the priestess lowers the python to the earth, its coils unwinding like a river finding its course. The air is cool, the ground soft with dew, and the worshippers disperse, their hearts light with the rite's afterglow. The serpent, small in the grass yet vast in their faith, feels alive, its glide a pulse that joins them to the gods. The priestess smiles, knowing the serpent's work is never done, its dance eternal as the stars. There's a moment of grace in this continuity, in the way the serpent binds the human to the holy, the moment to forever. Like a melody carried by a breeze through palm leaves, it lingers in the soul, its notes of devotion and wonder blending into one. The ancients didn't exalt the serpent for its grandeur, but for what it revealed: a world where every prayer, every step, is a step toward the divine. The serpent's path doesn't end in the ritual's fading drumbeat. Its coils stretch onward, taking new forms under timeless skies. But here, in the sacred spaces of offering and chant, it taught humanity to see the divine as near, to meet it with the serpent's open heart. As you rest tonight, imagine the serpent's gentle glide, its scales warm with the glow of countless prayers. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's sacred glide softens from the ritual's fading chants, its coils spiraling into the vastness of the cosmos, where its form mirrors the universe's eternal rhythm. Across cultures, from the starlit observatories of ancient Babylon to the meditative retreats of 20th century Tibet, spanning roughly 1800 BCE to 1970 CE, the serpent's spiral becomes a celestial dance, its curves echoing the galaxy's whirl and the pulse of creation. The air is crisp with cedar smoke or the thin chill of high altitudes, the silence broken by the murmur of astronomers or monks tracing patterns in the sky. Here, the serpent is a cosmic archetype, its sinuous body a reflection of time's endless cycle, its hiss the hum of stars singing to the void. Imagine a Babylonian priest-astronomer, his cloak dusted with clay, standing atop a ziggurat around 1700 BCE, his eyes fixed on the heavens. The night is heavy with the scent of myrrh, the Tigris below a silver thread under moonlight. He tracks a constellation, its stars forming a serpent's coil, and records it on a tablet, calling it Nera, the snake god linked to the Milky Way's arc. To him, the serpent is not just myth, but math. Its spiral, a map of celestial cycles, eclipses, solstices, the dance of planets. He sees the universe as a serpent, its body turning in an endless loop, holding chaos at bay with its rhythmic grace. His stylus moves, etching the serpent's path, a prayer to align Earth with the stars. This cosmic serpent appears worldwide. In India, Shesha, the thousand-headed Naga, cradles Vishnu, his coils a spiral that sustains the universe's dream. In Aboriginal Australia, the rainbow serpent shapes the Dreamtime's landscape, its path mirrored in the Milky Way's glow. The Maya saw Kukulkan's feathered form in the Pleiades, its flight a guide for planting and prophecy. By the 20th century, Tibetan Buddhists meditated on serpent-like mandalas, their spirals a visual chant of cosmic unity. The serpent's curve, whether in star charts or sacred art, became a universal symbol, its form a bridge between the human gaze and the infinite, its cycle a reminder that time, like the serpent, turns back on itself. There's a gentle truth here. The universe speaks in patterns, and we find meaning in their rhythm. The serpent's spiral teaches that life is not a straight line, but a circle, each ending curling into a new beginning, like seasons or breaths. By seeing the serpent in the stars, ancient peoples found their place in the cosmos, their small lives part of a larger dance. This perspective, quiet as a night sky, invites us to trust the flow of time, to see our own cycles as part of the whole. Picture a Tibetan monastery in 1960, its stone walls hung with thangkas, their serpent mandalas glowing in candlelight. A monk, his robes saffron, traces the spiral with a steady finger, his breath slow as he meditates on the universe's pulse. Outside, the Himalayas loom, their peaks sharp against a sky strewn with stars. The serpent's image is everywhere on star maps in Baghdad, carved into Olmec stelae, painted in Navajo sand art, its spiral a symbol of eternity, its curve a reminder that the cosmos breathes with us. To contemplate the serpent is to feel the star's weight, to know the universe is not separate, but home. There's a poetic image in this, the serpent as a ribbon of stardust, its scales weaving the Milky Way's arc, each coil a galaxy spinning in the dark. Its path is a spiral, endless and turning, like the orbits that bind planets to suns. And there's grace in the way it dances without effort, its rhythm a silent vow to hold the cosmos together. Like a melody hummed by the wind across a desert, the serpent's presence soothes, its notes of unity and wonder blending into one. The serpent's cosmic role wasn't merely symbolic. In Babylon, astronomers used serpent constellations to predict floods, their calculations tying myth to survival. In China, the azure dragon, a serpent-like constellation, guided emperors' calendars, its stars dictating rituals. Even in modern astronomy, the serpent's echo lingers. Constellations like Serpens and Hydra nod to its ancient place in the sky. The spiral, from galaxies to DNA, became a scientific truth, its form a bridge between myth and math, the serpent's curve a pattern that binds the smallest cell to the vastest nebula. What must it have felt like to see the serpent in the stars, its coils stretching beyond human reach? Did it spark awe, humility, or something softer, like a sense of belonging to the infinite? The question invites you to reflect on your own moments of wonder, perhaps a night under a clear sky, a glimpse of something vast, a feeling of being part of the whole. What connects you to the cosmos, and how does it shape your days? The serpent's story in the stars is one of rhythm, its spiral a reminder that the universe moves in cycles, not straight lines. In observatories, temples, and quiet hilltops, the serpent's image united stargazers. its form a way to chart both sky and soul. It didn't demand worship, it offered perspective, its presence a guide through the mystery of time. This legacy shaped cosmologies, from Babylonian epics to Buddhist sutras, each a nod to the serpent's timeless dance. As midnight falls over the Tibetan monastery, the monk rises, his meditation complete, the serpent mandala still vivid in his mind. Outside, the stars burn bright, their light untouched by the valley's frost. The serpent, vast in the sky yet close in his heart, feels alive, its spiral a pulse that joins him to the cosmos. He steps into the cold, his breath a small cloud, knowing the serpent's rhythm flows through all things, from galaxies to the flicker of his own thoughts. There's a moment of grace in this connection, in the way the serpent binds the human to the heavenly, the fleeting to the eternal, like a melody carried by a river through the night. It lingers in the soul, its notes of harmony and awe blending into one. The ancients didn't exalt the serpent for its grandeur, but for what it revealed: a world where every star, every life, is part of a single spiraling dance. The serpent's path doesn't end in the cosmic sky. Its coils stretch onward, taking new forms in the quiet of human hearts. But here, in the starlit patterns of countless cultures, it taught humanity to see time as a circle, to find home in the universe's endless turn. As you rest tonight, imagine the serpent's starry coils, its scales soft with the glow of distant suns. What might it whisper to you if you listened closely? The serpent's starry spiral softens from the cosmic dance, its coils curling inward to rest in the quiet of personal awakening, where its ancient wisdom speaks to the human heart. Across time, from the introspective journals of 19th century poets to the meditative retreats of the modern era, around 1850 CE to the present, the serpent becomes a personal guide, its form a whisper of transformation and self-discovery. The air is gentle with lavender or the faint hum of a distant city, the silence broken by the rustle of pages or the soft breath of contemplation. Here, the serpent is no longer a distant archetype, but an intimate presence, its hiss a call to awaken the soul, its scales a mirror of inner light. Imagine a poet, perhaps in a New England attic in 1860, her quill pausing over a notebook as she writes of a serpent gliding through her dreams. The room smells of ink and cedar, a single candle casting shadows that flicker like scales. To her, the serpent is not Eden's tempter, but a symbol of her own unfolding, its coils urging her to shed old fears and embrace her voice. She recalls myths, Kundalini's ascent, the Ouroboros's cycle, Dan's rainbow, and sees them not as stories, but as truths within her. The serpent, she writes, is a spark in the spine, a question that burns. Her words, private yet universal, echo the quiet stirrings of countless others who find the serpent in moments of clarity, its presence a guide to becoming whole. This personal serpent draws from every culture we've traced. Eden's Nachash asked Eve to choose, sparking self-awareness. Mesopotamia's Ningish Zida guarded inner wisdom. Egypt's Uraeus crowned the soul's authority, and Greece's Asclepius healed through insight. Jormungandr's circle taught endurance. Kundalini's rise promised liberation. Kukulkan's wings united earth and spirit, and Dan's rainbow wove life's threads. The alchemical Ouroboros transformed the self, the trickster serpent sharpened wit, and the psychological serpent mapped the unconscious. Its cosmic spiral aligned us with the stars. Its ritual role opened the divine. Now, the serpent turns inward, inviting each of us to listen to the pulse at our core, the questions that linger in the dark. There's a gentle truth here. Awakening is not a destination, but a quiet unfolding, a willingness to meet yourself as you are. The serpent teaches that growth comes not from force, but from patience, like a seed stirring in spring's warmth. It asks us to embrace our contradictions, light and shadow, courage and doubt as the ancients did, trusting that each step, however small, is part of the soul's spiral. This truth, soft as a whisper, invites us to see the serpent not as a symbol, but as a companion. Its glide a reminder that we are never alone in our becoming. Picture a modern retreat in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the air cool with pine and morning dew. A woman, her journal open, sits by a stream, sketching a serpent coiled around a heart. She's read Jung, studied myths, but the serpent she draws is hers, its scales the fears she's faced, its eyes the dreams she's claimed. Around her, others meditate, their mats spread under oaks, each finding the serpent in their own way, a memory, a hope, a moment of grace. The serpent's image is everywhere in yoga studios, on journal covers. In quiet thoughts, its form a symbol of awakening, its spiral a reminder that the journey inward is as vast as the cosmos. To meet the serpent is to ask, who am I, and who might I become? There's a poetic image in this, the serpent as a thread of dawn, weaving through the heart's quiet chambers, its scales catching the light of unspoken truths. Its path is a spiral, endless and turning, like the moments of clarity that shape a life. And there's grace in the way it waits, silent as stone, for us to answer its call, like a melody hummed in the stillness of dawn. The serpent's presence soothes, its notes of courage and discovery blending into one. The serpent's role in personal awakening is intimate yet universal. In diaries, art, and silent reflections, it appears as a guide, not a judge. Its form a reminder that transformation is a lifelong dance. From Whitman's poems, where the snake is a mystery of joy, to yoga's embrace of Kundalini, the serpent's wisdom endures, its spiral a path to self-knowledge. It doesn't demand grand gestures. It asks for presence, for the courage to face the questions. What holds you back? What sets you free that shape the soul's quiet growth? What must it have felt like to sense the serpent within, its warmth stirring in a moment of truth? Did it spark wonder, fear, or something softer, like trust in your own unfolding? The question invites you to reflect on your own awakenings, perhaps a choice that changed you, a silence that spoke, a dream that lingered. What guides you inward, and what does it reveal? As the serpent's journey closes, its coils settle, soft and slow, like petals falling in a quiet garden. The world grows still, the air gentle with the promise of rest. Picture a meadow at twilight, the grass swaying, a serpent gliding unseen, its scales brushing the earth like a whispered lullaby. You're safe here, held by the rhythm of your own breath. The night a blanket woven with stars. The serpent, your guide through Eden's choice, Mesopotamia's wisdom, Egypt's power, and beyond, now rests beside you, its eyes soft as moonlight. It asks nothing, only offers its presence, a reminder that every step you've taken, every question, every doubt has brought you closer to yourself. Let the serpent's spiral fade into your dreams, its coils a gentle cradle for your heart. The stories Jormungandr's circle, Kukulkan's flight, the Ouroboros's loop linger like echoes, their truths woven into your own. As you drift, imagine the serpent's scales dissolving into starlight, its hiss a sigh that carries you to sleep. You are part of the spiral, your life a thread in the universe's quiet dance. Rest now, dear friend, and let the night hold you, soft and warm, until dawn whispers your name.